Hi, Draymond.
Hello,
Kareth Burke,
Kara.
NBC Sports Bay Area. You guys have been peppered with questions about injuries for a long time now, but Steve Kerr showed some of the heart behind some of these decisions as well. Last night he said when he never would have forgiven himself if Klay had played in Game 3 and re-injured himself. So what is the human element here? What is the heart that goes into some of these tough decisions alongside the evaluations from the training staff?
I think the human elements are important. At the end of the day, you want to, as much as you want to win, this is, how people feed their families. As I've said before, when you have injuries, you live those injuries every day, and so obviously Steve, as a former player, he understands that. And, if Klay was to go out there and play last night and injure his hamstring, he'll be dealing with that for a long time. Even when you hurt like hamstrings and stuff, like, yeah, you may be back healthy in 4 or 6 weeks or whatever, but you're still dealing with that. And so, just understanding that and, taking in consideration a guy's well-being, even more so than necessarily the team's well-being, I think that's important and appreciated as players.
Draymond, Ann Killian with the San Francisco Chronicle. You've probably seen the interaction between Kyle Lowry and a fan. The fan turns out to be a minority owner of the team. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that. And I know that you've gotten your fair share of harassment in visiting arenas. I'm just wondering, do you feel that players are kind of vulnerable, a little bit under attack? And what do you think should be maybe done about it?
I think players are definitely vulnerable. Anytime you're in a situation where you can do no right, in defending yourself, you're vulnerable. So, if a fan says whatever they want to you and then you say something back, you're fine. If Kyle was to then hit back, a lot more than fine would have then happened to Kyle. In a situation where you're essentially helpless, you're always going to be vulnerable in anything in life. It's not just on the basketball court. In any situation, and you can't help yourself, you're vulnerable. And so I think, as players, we definitely are. But I think, you have to give Kyle a lot of credit in the way he handled it. That's, you're playing in the NBA Finals, so your emotions are running high. For him to handle it the way he did says a lot about his character, a lot about him as a man and the way he handles himself. That was great to see the way he handled that. And, as far as, it all goes, the league has really grown and really having a no-nonsense approach when it comes to fan interactions and fan and player interactions. They've shown that over the course of the years now, and it goes all the way back to the malice at the Palace. And, even from, over the last couple of years to fans, getting removed from games for, getting out of line, like the league has really taken a stand on that. And, obviously, it's the NBA Finals, so there's a ton of, eyes and attention on this. And I know, every decision that I've seen, Adam have to make, every tough decision, he's made those decisions. So we'll see what happens. But, you got to give Kyle a lot of credit for the way he handled the situation. He was a true professional in the way he handled that.
Are you curious if there's maybe a double standard when you're talking about a partial owner in the way this will be handled? And also, are you embarrassed at all for the organization that it was one of your owners?
Obviously, this organization, from the time I've been here and everything I've known about this organization has been a top-notch, upper echelon organization. And so definitely not the type of thing that you want out of somebody out of the ownership group when you're talking to the organization. And as far as the double standard, it's hard to really sit here and say there's a double standard when it comes to owner. And to my knowledge, there's been no overall ruling yet. So I think before we start talking double standard, we at least need to get a league a fair chance to respond. I think as much as everybody would want there to be a decision already, I've been a part of situations A lot of them, where not necessarily that, but where you got to talk to league security and then this guy and that guy, and they got to interview everybody. Like, that stuff take time. So as much as we all want, and when I say we all, I mean as the world in general want a response right now, like, the one thing I can say is they do their diligence. And so you just got to let the process play out and see what happens. But I'm not going to sit here and say that there's a double standard and not give them a chance to respond and make whatever ruling they're going to make.
Tim in the back.
Draymond, Tim Pialcom, The Athletic, just following up on that a little bit, just specifically because he's a minority owner. LeBron has mentioned on his Instagram that he should be held to a higher standard. You're part of the team. You're part of representation of the team. Would you agree with that, that a minority owner should be held to standards of behavior higher than someone else?
I mean, I think you have to be. When you're speaking of, like, as players, we are held to a different standard. Coaches are held to anybody in the NBA circle. You're held to a different standard, and so I think it's no different. When you start talking of anybody in any ownership group in the league, you're held to a different standard. And I mean, you can say it's unfair or not, like whatever your opinion is on it, whether you're one way or another. That's just the reality of it. We're all held to a different standard, and that's not going to change. This game continues to grow. That standard continues to grow. So you're not a player in 2019 is held to a different standard than a player was in 1999. Like, that's just the reality of where our game is today. We're all held to a different standard.
Fourth row.
Melissa Roll on The Guardian. Considering that every player, his whole career, this is the ultimate goal. Now you guys are here and Kevin Durant is out. He still has hope of coming back, the disappointment of, still being held out. How is he handling all of that?
I mean, I think he's just trying to get healthy. I'm not really sure if he's being held out or he is. I mean, obviously, I think he's still recovering and whatever, but yeah, I don't really know what's Kevin's day-to-day dealings with the training staff. I try to spend as less time in the training room as I can, so I don't really know what their back and forth is.
Janie in the front.
Draymond, Janie McCauley from AP. They seem to have an answer for you guys. Every time you guys hit a big shot last night, they came up with something. How much getting Clay back in there can you guys make a big defensive adjustment? And Steph said last night, we can't count on our offense to win us another championship.
I think having Clay back is important. When you talk about missing Clay, Kevin, and Kevon, obviously everything will point to the offensive end. But they're three of our top 5 or 6 defenders. And I think that's equally or even more important than the offensive side of the ball. Like, we still scored 109 points last night. That's enough points to win. We won with 109. So, we got to get stops. And I think, adding Clay back to the fold, is always going to make a difference. The way Clay pressures the ball, the way he flies around on the defensive end, that makes a big difference.
Back left and third row over here.
Draymond, Nick Friedel, ESPN. You guys have said it all along for a month. You're better with Kevin. You want him back. From y'all's perspective, what are your expectations if he is to come back in this series after missing so much time?
Well, he'll come back and draw a lot of attention because no coach is just going to be like, oh, he's coming off injury. Let's see if he's not quite Kevin Durant. Like, you're just not going to take that chance. So, it'll open the floor up more. That's for sure. But, Kevin's a competitor. And, as a competitor, when you step out there on the floor hurt or not, or just coming back from injury or not, you're going to give everything you got. And, he's way better than a lot of people when he's 100%. So if he's 75%, he'd still probably be better than a lot of people. So we'll see if he's able to come back or not.
Last one here in the third row.
Paul Antunes, ESPN Brazil. The last 4 games that you guys won, Draymond, You were down by 17 and 3, and you were down by 12 in your last win against the Raptors. Is there something about being down that kind of brings out the best in you personally? I know you guys played with tremendous pace in those 4 wins, and now you're down 2-1, kind of a do-or-die game 4 type of deal now.
I think, when you're hit with a little adversity, whether it's being down 2-1 or whether it's being down 17 or 12 or whatever it is, your true colors show. And I think that's just kind of the makeup of us. That's our DNA. Our backs are against the wall. We continue to fight. We have a lot of firepower, so all of a sudden we continue to fight, and then we go on a run. Some teams, they don't handle that situation well. You got to give them a lot of credit last night. It kept feeling like that run was right there. Nick Nurse took some key timeouts, and the guys answered every time we started to make a push. So you got to give them a lot of credit. But I just think, our best basketball is usually played when our backs are against the wall, whether that's in a series, whether that's in one particular game.